Welcome to my house and to another episode of the Back Catalogue podcast. This is the podcast where we, and by we I mean me, Apple, my co-host / co-founder Vincent, we dive into the streaming services. We tell you, the listener and the viewer, what is worth it and what is not. And it is still Ozploitation August.
Bro, it's still.
And still. You know, they'll give you that belt for and still. But we are doing 1978.
Let me just take the pump cover off.
Oh, that's OG. That's OG back catalogue.
I was just telling my co-host / co-founder here, and also my brother, because he was in the vicinity. I said, I did 6 push-ups today.
Wow.
And you know, I've been already invited into the Science Bro podcast.
I mean, you're on the next Mr. Olympia podcast as well. How to get big in 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it's just do 6 push-ups. That's it.
So today we're doing 1978's very own Patrick. It's Ozploitation August, as I said. It might even be April, but it's Ozploitation all the time. This could be the Ozploitation podcast from now on.
Yeah.
The Ozploitation catalogue. And you go to a point where there's just no more Ozploitation.
That's right. And in our last episode of the Patreon, which is actually free for 7 days if you want to sign up.
Wow.
Right. And we talk about all the ways that Ozploitation can continue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we make the next wave.
Yeah.
We are the next wave.
That's right. But we can't divulge any more of that on this because, this is the podcast where and the Patreon is the podcast where no one knows.
I mean, this is the podcast where we give it out for free, but the Patreon you got to pay.
That's right.
Except for 7 days. So let me get into some facts and we'll get into this movie. So this got a 6.1 out of 10 on the IMDb. It's got 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. 3.2 on Letterboxd. That's out of 5.
Letterboxd?
Yeah. They got Letterboxd on here, so you know it's good.
I don't even know what Letterboxd is.
Patrick has been in an irreversible coma for the past several years and possesses psychokinetic powers. Later, he falls in love with new nurse Kathy, who shows some affection to him. Now, that's one synopsis, but there is also another synopsis which will help us get into it. So an enigmatic young man kills his mother, then somehow winds up in a coma in a private hospital. And I mean, that's the start of this movie. And we're going to get into this. Now, there's going to be a lot of comparisons when I describe the things about this movie, whether I liked them or not. I'm going to compare it a lot to the 2 movies that we've watched previously.
Yeah.
Because I think we watched last week in regard to the Waking Fright, I think we watched the gold standard of cinema.
Well, I was actually speaking about Waking Fright, and I was saying to an individual in the world, because I speak to more people than you.
You do.
And I was saying,
to you.
Yeah, and that's okay. Because I'm the conduit with which your conversation flows through to other people.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. But I was saying Waking Fright may be one of the best movies I've watched in a long time if it hadn't have been for that wild kangaroo scene. Because that really just...
I mean, through the power of editing, you change that, you've got a different story.
That's what I mean.
You know what I mean? So you could change that and then that movie becomes the best movie of all time.
Yeah, because I'm not saying that the whole scene shouldn't have been there. I just really did not like the whole animal cruelty stuff because that was just...
Yeah, and it's hard to take out a scene with animal cruelty and just say, look, we've taken out the scene so the animal cruelty didn't exist.
No.
It still existed to make that movie.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part.
That's the hard part, which it's unfortunate because otherwise that's a real good movie.
It's a real good
movie. And I mean, if we're talking Ozploitation, that is at its very core Ozploitation.
I mean, it exploits the good, the bad, and the ugly of Australia.
Well, I mean, it just exploits kangaroos, which are...
In this case,
by definition, they are only in Australia, so...
Yeah. I mean, you could probably go to a zoo somewhere and there'll be a kangaroo in there. But then it will get to winter and the kangaroo will be like, dude, I'm not used to this. You know what I'm saying? And that's Ozploitation in many other ways.
That's Ozploitation.
So I'm going to compare it to Razorback and to Waking Fright because those are the 2 Ozploitation movies that we've watched since. And I think we started off really well with some really great Ozploitation films to start off with, right?
Yeah.
Now, I said to Vincent, I was like, I want to watch this movie because I've seen the remake. Well, I was at a drive-in and they did the double feature with Grease, and I'm talking about John Travolta's Grease, very own.
And if you want to listen to the more detail in your driving experience, because that was a bit of a wild experience,
That was a bit of a wild experience, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, there's Patreon
There's
content
Patreon
for that
content.
as well.
I did. That's where I explained it.
That's where you explained it.
But the double feature was the remake of Patrick.
Which was 2019.
No.
Where did I'm pretty sure when I was on SBS it said 2019.
Puppy. No. No. It was like 2013. Because like Mans wasn't rocking up to Grease Lightning in 2019.
That's what I'm thinking. 2019, but maybe I mean obviously I've got it wrong.
Like I had hair back when I was rocking up to Grease Lightning. In like 2019 I had some hair.
Yeah.
But it wasn't enough to be like I look like John Travolta here.
I was going to look it up, but I can't be bothered.
It's about a 2013 joint.
Okay.
Because I remember we were still in school at the time.
School.
So that's high school things. But
And that'll make you wake in fright.
dude, if you woke up and you were school again, I mean, you'll jump somewhere.
I mean, Zac Efron will wake up and will be like, I'm 17 again.
And like Matthew Perry's there also.
Bro, Matthew Perry.
And like, hopefully he's doing well.
One of the best ones, man. R.I.P. Anyway, keep going.
Matthew Perry, he's with us still. But here's what I want to say
Matthew
about...
Perry, welcome to the podcast. Following on from George Orwell and Sean Kemp. Oh, that's a Patreon reference. That doesn't...
Well, I mean,
doesn't
you're
flow.
giving them hints and touches.
I'm giving
of
them
Patreon.
hints. I'm in a bit of a chaotic mood today.
You've just seen things. And we
I've
just
seen
need
things.
to...
I mean, I saw Patrick last night.
We need to keep this on the straight and narrow so we can talk about Patrick.
All right,
here.
let's go. Patrick, let's go, boys.
I wanted to watch this movie because the driving experience of the Patrick remake was an experience. And it was a heightened experience. The whole movie is heightened. And then I'm thinking, if we've seen these Ozploitation movies, which the whole movies are heightened, Razorback was wild from start to finish. Wake in Fright in a different way was wild from start to finish. Patrick, surely a movie about a man in a coma who does psychokinesis. He's making things fly around. He's doing things with his mind. Surely that's going to be insane. I watched this movie and I'll tell you one thing. I was thoroughly disappointed.
This was trash.
And this is when I was watching this whole movie. As I said, man in a coma. This movie starts off with a weird sex scene in which Patrick is listening to his mother.
There's weird nudity in this film.
Well, see, we're gonna talk about that in a little bit because we're gonna talk about some nudity later, and the Ozploitation era versus now in regard to nudity. Patrick is listening in to his mum have sex with another man.
Yeah.
And then his choice is to kill both of them, which is a wild start to a movie.
Mm.
But it never left the three. Like this movie just stayed at a pace the whole time. You got a note about that.
I was watching it. I was going, this movie builds up, and it just feels like, hey, we're building up to something, and it's just simmering.
It never boils, does it?
That's right. You make boiled eggs. You don't actually bring that to a boil. You just simmer it. Once it starts simmering, you put it on for another 6 minutes, and you got hard boiled eggs.
And I know like Mans is in a coma, but I think there was carbon monoxide moving through that place because like everyone was low energy.
This was a garbage movie and filled with garbage people in it because there was some real rough stuff in this movie.
There was. The issue with a movie like this, a horror movie, right? And a horror movie from an era in which they could go wild. And it was their first entry. Like this was Australia's, this 70s period was like, we got R18 ratings. We can go wild. We can start making our movies. We've got that independence now to make Australian movies. We don't need these directors from elsewhere. We got actors here, we got whatever. And then they make just this low, not only low quality, like the quality was fine actually. I won't say that, but just low energy horror movie.
But it didn't even feel like an Australian movie because a lot of the people weren't even Australian.
Well, I mean, the main character Kathy was British.
Yeah, same with the doctor, and same with the matron.
Yeah. Sorry, the doctor who's doing
the doctor who's got the most distinguished hairdo in all of Ozploitation.
You're talking about I'm
talking about the dude with the toupee. Yeah, there's no way the doctor from the actual hospital place.
Yeah.
That man's wearing a piece.
I mean, he could have been wearing a piece and he could have been packing a piece, but I did not notice it.
Bro, I'm saying John Moran will say it's a toy gun. He was strapped. This guy will say it's real hair. He's strapped. I'm not even. You look at this hair. There was a close up, and I'm thinking there is no way. There is no way.
I'm gonna get a photo up of this dude. Now, look, I completely.
You get a photo up. I'm gonna do something real quick.
Are you gonna pause this, or do you want me to like?
We're just gonna keep rolling.
We can't keep rolling.
Yeah, we're gonna keep rolling. I'm gonna be like a second.
I'll piece you up, man. Look, I'm looking at photos. I can't see a man with a piece on, but like there was some pieces in this, and we'll get into that in a little bit. No, that's not a toque, man. That's not a toque.
No,
I mean, it's sitting on his head weirdly, but that's not a toque, right?
bro. I'm telling you.
Is that a toque?
I'm telling you. Look, I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert. And leave a comment, leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a $15 on the Patreon, and let us know.
Dude, if you're wearing a toque, how are you going to have a receding toque?
I'm saying it was not a good one.
Anyway, so yeah, I guess there wasn't as many. I think the matron was Australian.
Well,
but she just came with that British twang because she's formal.
I think also because there were other British people in, like the main character was British, and then that doctor was British, whether he was packing or not. I think that lifted the Britishness of the movie.
It did, and I think the Australian. I mean, there wasn't really, and the thing that I think we need to realize as well is
they're not all going to be in the outback, and they're not all going to be like, "Hey, a dingo ate my baby."
It's just going to be like, you know, how there's movies set in America where it's just like this could be anywhere, but it happens to just be America.
That's right, and I understand that, but I think after the previous 2 weeks of, hey, we're in the outback, and this is just wild in the outback, and like we're just sinking tinnies, and in this one, not like we're talking tinnies, but not like with teas.
That's right.
Tinny with teas.
Well, okay. Should we get into the news here real quick?
Yeah. The funniest part is this movie literally starts off with, and this might be like, you know, parental guidance.
Oh, it's 100% parental guidance for these movies anyway.
But I'm saying, this podcast where we give this out for free, and you know the Patreon, you can sign up. That's the Patreon where like they, as in you got to pay.
You got to pay.
But they just having sex. And I'm talking like nudity.
Yeah, and
it's only brief, but
and it was a very uncomfortable. Like it just was not like it wasn't even like, you know, something that people were hollering and hooting in the cinemas. It was just like, this is just weird to start us off. And look, there, you know, when that happened, I was thinking, okay, this movie's going to be weird, and if it starts off here, it's just going to get weirder. But it never did. I think beyond that, the nudity in this movie, like there was nudity, but it also wasn't necessarily that far out of context.
No, that's right. But it was just weird that it was in random spots. It was almost like, hey, this movie's boring. We've got to keep the people entertained.
But I also think, and this is why I was going to compare it to like now generations nudity, is that you have this movie in an era in which like the feminism movement is coming out. Or not coming out. It's been out for like it's been out, you know, early release.
It's been released.
It's been released early. You know, they had early screenings of it. But you got all these sexual movements happening. This was just to show like, hey, this is just normal stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas I think now it would be like if Patrick was made again in 2023, it might be like it's the pool scene, and then the nudity just walks up to the camera and says like, "Look at me, I'm nude," like holler and hoot. You know what I mean?
It is funny because at one point they're at a party, which does not look like a party.
It looks very bad.
I think there's 6 people that I've seen.
I mean, the energy is as high as the entire movie, which is a 3.
Yeah, it's also hilarious that one dude kind of starts semi-drowning at one point, which is apparently to do with Patrick.
Yeah.
Anyway, but there's just 2 people in the corner of the pool making out, and the lady's naked.
She's naked, yeah. And I don't know if he was naked, but I don't think he was.
At least above the waist, they were both naked.
The funny thing about that scene is there's you know, people making out, and like, you know, these things will happen at a pool party with 6 people. But the other great thing is there's a dude just doing laps.
It's hilarious because he's like, hey, after a day, I'm gonna, you know, I just got to do a few laps to wind down. And it's hilarious because he says that as if it's just do a few laps to wind down.
Yeah,
yeah. Hey, Sheila, look at these few laps. See this form? Mate, you've never seen a breaststroke like this.
And look, she hadn't seen a breaststroke like that, especially because the guy just started drowning. So, and this is the part that's frustrating. So Patrick has these telekinetic powers that don't just allow him to affect things where like near him.
He can basically do anything, it seems.
It seems like he's a god. He can drown people from further away. He can stop elevators. He can make people do things that they don't want to do. For example, one lady like touches an electric thing and just zaps herself. Like to a crisp. But none of that is done well enough to be eerie or scary.
No.
And an example of that is Patrick hates this matron lady, and the matron lady hates Patrick. And Patrick is like, I'm going to kill this lady. Now, as Patrick is doing some telekinesis on this lady, she's walking through towards this thing that says danger, like do not touch.
We talking electrical situation, right? They're at the generator or the excuse me. They're at the electrical power for the building, and there's just water everywhere.
And it's just open like for everyone to touch.
Yeah.
There's no safety measures in place. And I mean, it was the 70s, and this looks like
it was the 70s,
joint.
but you put just water on the ground.
Oh,
Like, there's no way in the 70s people were going, yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is. You know?
like, especially around electrical components. I mean, look, we did watch that movie about, what was that movie when that dude was driving through, he had the computer in his car, and his like car was like he had the top down, and the thing was raining.
What? Oh.
Computer who wore tennis shoes.
Computer wore tennis shoes.
Like, that's the same deal. And I mean, they're same era.
Yeah, that is true.
So this lady is walking towards, this thing, and it cuts between this lady, the matron walking to the thing, cuts to cuts to Patrick, and then cuts to who's the main actress in that?
Kathy.
Kathy. Whenever it cuts to Kathy, the music just stops. And then it gets into dialogue, and then it cuts back to the matron, and then the music is there again, but it's not building up.
No.
And it's like, hold on a second, am I meant to be scared that this lady's walking towards her demise?
We've also not explained like the plot of this movie very well. I'm just going to do it right now.
We did explain it.
I know, but just for people, because like I'm lost as well because this
Yeah.
movie is trash. But essentially, it's hey, Patrick is in a coma. Man's eyes are wide open, which is, I mean, that's a horror movie in itself if you look at that too much. And he's in a hospital. There's a new lady, Kathy. She's just got separated from her husband, and she's now a nurse of sorts,
She's
nurse adjacent, and she's looking after Patrick, and she's like, oh, I think he can feel like, you got to help him. Like, we've got to help this Patrick bloke. And it's just that, and then Patrick falls in love with her, and then essentially nothing happens, but
and Patrick he's doing stuff to keep her in the space and to also ruin the rest of her relationships.
you can't tell me that this is a horror movie and one person dies from the main villain.
Yeah, I think only one person dies, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like talk about a previous boyfriend dying of someone that worked at the thing. Look, if we're talking horror, and if we're talking an era, when did Halloween come out? Halloween, one of the greatest horror movies of all time, came out earlier in that decade, right? Halloween is a movie in which suspense was really just put on screen, and you were put in a space where you could always see what was going on, but you were always terrified.
Yeah.
You felt like a stalker was there with you. You have a man with telekinetic powers. That's like you can't even stop that thing from happening. That's scary. It's always there with you, yet you never felt any of the suspense.
Never. But also there was weird situations where they were like honing in onto the electrical component of his powers. As in, now they've plugged in the typewriter. Now he's got, now he's on the grid.
Also, I lied. Halloween did not come out earlier.
It was 1978, wasn't it?
It was 1978.
That's a good guess.
It was the same year.
That was the same year. But yeah, this is not even, I wouldn't even classify this as a horror movie.
No, I wouldn't classify this as much.
Yeah.
Like this is a nothing movie, unfortunately. And I was really upset by that because I was excited for some exploitation.
It was also just a terrible movie in the sense that every scene felt like they just, hey, like we've got minutes to fill.
Yeah.
We'll just put this scene. We'll just put a man sticking a syringe into a frog and being like, oh, I'm going into the brain now, and now I'm going to the spinal column. Yeah. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's a frog.
And then he eats the frog.
And he eats the frog at the end. And that's the duality of man.
Let's quickly, before we just rate this, because there's not much else to talk about in this movie.
I got a little bit to talk about.
I want to quickly talk about the relationships between the characters in this movie. So Vincent touched on Kathy, the nurse. She has a husband who they're going through a divorce.
Which at one point he breaks into her apartment and tries to
make love to her.
And then this was one of the most awful things I've heard in a movie that we have covered on this podcast.
Yeah.
And the dude says something along the lines of so much for women's rape fantasies.
He says those words.
He says those
He
words.
doesn't say something along the lines of it.
No, that's pretty much verbatim.
And he says that and then
leaves
smirks
immediately.
And laughs. So I was thinking they were going to do something really scary with this, that the horror was not going to be Patrick, but rather it was going to be the relationship. Because what's happening is as Kathy moves into her new space and starts her job, she's having to stay up late and wait till a car drives away because her ex-husband is just waiting for her. She puts on new locks on the door so her ex-husband can't come in. She's doing all sorts of crazy stuff, right? Not as in, no, sorry. She's doing all sorts of stuff to stop the craziness from happening.
Yeah.
Because this man is stalking her. He then breaks into her house while she's asleep and he's drunk, tries to assert himself on her and then says what Vincent said. And I didn't say it, Vincent said it. But and then they proceed to have a friendly relationship after that.
Yeah, and then they get relationships are complicated.
They are complicated.
But in the sense of this movie, because there's no real purpose. The movie doesn't really have any direction.
That's right. The reason that it's bad that they get into a relationship after that, the fact that this guy tried to do what he tried to do, is because the movie didn't do anything with it, and it also didn't create a narrative. It didn't create a narrative of we settled our differences and we worked through our issues, and now he's doing better and I'm doing better.
And now he's in a lift.
Or it didn't work through it in the fact that it's like, this is some Stockholm syndrome and I'm just stuck in this situation, so I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah.
And then Patrick just murders this guy.
There was no meaning to a lot of this movie. It was just, hey, what are we doing next? And they got on set and they started filming. They're like, we're doing this. Why are we doing it? Because we're doing it.
They look like they had a quota for time.
Yeah.
And it had to be an hour and 40 minutes instead of hour and 20, which in other countries it was cut to an hour and 20 minutes.
And like some countries it was just cut.
Well,
like they got in the movie, they just said, sorry, it's been cut. Here's your $5 back.
Even funnier is that in other countries it was, in America, when it got sent over there, it was dubbed completely to have American accents.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Like that's how.
If they dubbed it with American accents, but then also dubbed Patrick's inner thoughts, I'd watch that movie.
Yeah.
I'd watch that movie.
And he's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm Patrick. I'm here.
Patrick, I'm here.
Dude, can I just tell you another frustrating thing about Patrick? So the whole movie, as Vincent said, Patrick is lying in a bed and he's got his eyes open. And that's scary. And all you can see, all that tells you that Patrick is doing some telekinesis or psychokinesis is that the machines start kicking up.
Yeah.
So his heart rate goes up. There's some other machine that goes up. Things happen, right? But nothing happens physically with him, which I think is terrifying.
Yeah.
Right? There's two scenes in this movie. One bit in which Patrick does something and there's a nurse in the room and then Patrick looks at her and growls. And I saw that and I was like, you've just ruined the entire character of Patrick.
Yeah.
Because can this man move? Is this what he's been doing the whole time?
The idea of the patient that seemingly has no control over anything is essentially stuck in their own body and eyes open, but they're actually still there and they can do wild things with their mind. That's an interesting premise for especially a horror movie.
Yeah.
But they do absolutely nothing with that apart from, this man's, trying to kill me and I'm just going to throw him against the wall and like his toupee is still going to stay on.
Even though he's bleeding from his head, like his toupee is staying on. And like, do you wash it in the shower or do you wash it like in the washing machine? And that's
if it's real human hair.
Yeah, but like, what are you going to sit? Like, how do you dry it? Like, there's some material that would stay soggy, right? I don't really know the ins and outs of the tube.
But you're going to find out.
I'll find out, and like, I'll come on this podcast with a tube on.
That would be hilarious.
And like, I've just got hair for like 4 episodes.
You just got 4, and it's like the George Costanza cut.
Yeah.
When he gets the tube. And
the second thing that Patrick does is towards the end of the movie, the climax of this movie, which just ends. It just ends.
It's so bizarre. Because he's writing on a typewriter as well. Yeah. This Kathy lady is writing on a typewriter to, observations and whatnot. And he commandeers a typewriter and he's writing like, hey, Patrick wants his hand job. And that was the only thing you told me about this movie. And I was thinking, there's no way this is a movie I want to watch. And evidently this is no way a movie I ever want to watch again.
No.
But that was hilarious because it's just dropped in there.
Oh, dude, but in the remake, and I want to watch the remake, not necessarily for this podcast, but just to see. In the remake, it was done so much scarier. Because there was multiple patients who were in a coma who then Patrick commandeered their bodies, stood them up.
Instead of the typewriter, he commandeered the other patients.
And made them speak, which was terrifying. But Patrick then, towards the climax of the movie, flies out of his bed and goes, ah! And just flies into a
that was
cabinet.
Hilarious. I mean, it all came back to the frogs, give him a bit of electricity. Oh, because man's flies. He's sitting and then he goes to diving headfirst into a cabinet on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Which that was hilarious. I was looking at that, I was going, what a perfect way to end a terrible movie.
But that's the end of the movie.
Yeah. Well, he also just says, hey, Kathy, I love you.
Yeah.
Give me a hand job again and then kill both of us together and we'll go out as one. Which is, it was.
It somehow went from being a horror movie to trying to be Romeo and Juliet to trying to be
so
just
weird.
some sort of, I don't know, commentating on just.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it's commentating on.
It's commentating on hey, we exploited the people who made this movie because they thought they were going to be in a good movie, but they're not in a good movie. Because this is a 1 out of 10 for me.
Dude, and the fact is, I think what gives this movie the status, the cult status, is the imagery of Patrick in the bed. Because you see that on a poster.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
I was looking at that, I was going, okay, this movie might actually be scary because I'm not a man of horror. And I was kind of not excited. But after half an hour and you realize, hey, we're in this movie, the plane's taken off, but it's never leaving the tarmac.
It's just doing the circles.
Yeah.
Because weather's not good.
Weather's not good, bro. I mean, they don't do circles on the tarmac, but my analogy was good. You just interpreted it wrong. This is with the situation there.
Yeah, but I'm saying the tarmac, it only goes so far.
But in this movie, it's forever and ever.
What I'm saying is you have to do circles, you have to go around. You can't just go straight because then you just fall off. You just crash into something. So you got to go back around.
All right, sure.
So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to give this movie a straight up 2.5.
I'm going to give it a 1.
I'm only giving it a 2.5 because it exploited me and you. It exploited 1 hour and 45 minutes of our time.
Right, it absolutely exploited.
And I'm going to tell you one thing and one thing only, Vincent.
Also, one thing I've got things to say, bro. I know you want to keep this podcast, you just want to leave. All right?
I just want to get out of here.
I know.
You said sushi chain, I'm thinking about that. Anyway,
the funniest part of this movie was I zoned out for a bit of it and I was doing other things. And at one point there was this Patrick dude, he writes on the typewriter, hey, you know what happened to your boyfriend? His hands, I got rid of the feeling in his hands because I can do that. That dude in the pool, I made him drown. Also, your boyfriend's stewing in the lift.
Yeah.
Because he gets in the lift, the boyfriend gets in the lift with some flowers and that's it. And I thought I missed the part where something else happened, but right at the end, he's still in the lift.
He just stays
He stands in the lift, and you're thinking, this is a lift in the 1970s. There's no way he's banging on the walls and no one can hear him.
To give context, this is a private hospital that they're in.
Yeah.
And it's a very small private hospital.
It's just an old building, basically.
Yeah. And it's not but 2 floors.
Yeah.
Right? Well, there's
the
a basement, there's the main area, and then there's the top floor. So you don't really need to go up an elevator. This guy goes up the elevator, two-story building, right? Patrick then stops the elevator and gets him stuck in there. And the dude's just chilling for hours. And to the point where I think it's days at that point.
Yeah, he's there for 3 days, I think, 2 or 3 days.
And he's not screaming from the start. He starts screaming at the end. And then eventually, Patrick lets him up, but he is just sitting there, just well, this is what happens. Yeah, this is Australia. Someone will get here. I do not understand why that was in there. One, there was no suspense to it because he gets into the elevator,
and then you just don't hear about it for Probably about 45
45
minutes.
minutes. And then he's just in the elevator and he's sweating. Now, obviously there is a reason why they have an elevator in this place, because they have a
Yeah, but
patient.
that's right. And they need to, equipment and stuff up and down.
But the fact that it is such a small space means that if you scream, heads will hear you. Because there's only but 2 doors. There's there's a door that you go in for the elevator, like the one like when you get there, right? To go into it. Yeah. And then there's one upstairs.
Yeah.
That's 2 spaces. I think that this movie was not well thought out. I think that they had the plan of, we've got a man with psychokinesis.
That's all
He's
they
in
had.
a coma.
That's absolutely all they had.
Maybe he'll kill somebody.
It's funny because he killed the matron, and which realistically you could argue that she was going to die anyway, because she was doing electrical things bare feet in the water.
But he made her do that.
Yeah, but she was going down there to do that anyway.
Was she?
Yeah.
I thought it was just him like making her do it from the start.
Oh, maybe. Anyway, who cares?
Yeah.
And
I don't think why is Matron going to be like, hey, I'm just going to go down.
No, I thought she was going to turn off the power so he would die, like, because the machines are keeping him breathing.
Yeah, I see that. I see your point now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to hear a fun fact?
What?
So near Patrick's window, there's a thing called there's a sign that says emergency entrance.
Yeah.
But for the majority of the film, especially when Patrick is doing things,
emergency trance.
It just says trance.
Trance, yeah.
And that's foreshadowing.
I mean,
if you shine a light on something, that will be that.
One of the funny things that I noticed in this movie was Kathy's husband, who, I don't know, his name's like Ed or something.
Jacquard.
Is Ed. Yeah,
so him as Jacquard.
But he calls her Jacquard.
Yeah.
He calls his wife by his last name, which is real weird.
I mean, that's just, you get a man who's like doesn't really understand how to connect with other people, and also doesn't understand how to like respect people. Like he'll call you.
But he wasn't calling her that. They didn't met and they go, hey, Jacquard, how's he going? That was a conscious decision. Hey,
yeah, I'm
calling her by my last name now.
Calling her Jacquard,
which is hilarious. The other thing that I had here, what else I was going to say, when the matron died, there was a police investigation.
Yes.
And there's a whole situation with cops and whatever. And the funniest thing about that was the cop was saying, Kathy was telling me, hey, you got to investigate Patrick and what happened and things like that and all this situation. And the cop goes, listen, lady, I've got enough of a job writing up this report as it is. Which, that was the most Australian part of that movie. So I was like, dude's like, hey, I've got to write this whole report.
Like, I've got a job
that's all good. That's all the time I got today.
That's all I'm doing.
Because we're talking 9 to 5 and it's 4:30.
Exactly. Here's what I think. I'm going to tell you this right now.
Tell me right now.
Here.
Tell me.
Right now. Last week's movie was meandering with a purpose. And this has been the back catalogue. Yes.
Talk soon.
Yes. I had you going in the first half, right?